going on, everybody? This is Lady Luck here again, and I am very, very excited to start the series on Eligio Bishop or Eligio Bishop. I've heard his name pronounced in about three or four different ways, and AKA Nature Boy, and this cult that still exists in Atlanta. Now, although Nature Boy is in prison for the rest of his life, and I'm going to go over an article. I want to check out the series that is on Hood Horrors YouTube channel. I think his content, his videos is so well done, and they're not, very lengthy, so it's easier to kind of check out the information presented. And then I'm going to add on additional information with various articles, as well as court documents as I come across them, and then show. I think this is like a polygamous type of cult. So he just brought in women and called them his wives, and there's still three that are remaining that are now back on social media trying to advocate for his release and all those types of things. It's my understanding, based on my research here, that he was, and of course, Hood Horrors videos, that he was attacked in prison. And so, because of that, his three wives are trying to get him to be fully released as if he has not been found guilty and convicted and sentenced to prison. So, as I stated with R. Kelly, there's other actions that should take place if someone is, having their life threatened, their safety is in jeopardy while in prison. The first resolution should not be to just have this person released from prison, because it diminishes the reason why they're there. Uh, Once again, you have a scenario with Nature Boy where his wives are here crying for him to be released, and the first step that should occur is that he's moved to a different part of the prison or transferred to another prison altogether. But the charges still stand, and it should not be legally sufficient to just have a judge say, all right, well, we're going to go ahead and release him because he got, attacked in prison. This is proof and evidence that it's just all too common that these things occur in prison. Should there be tighter security depending on, the inmate and their high profile celebrity status? Yes. But should they just be exempt from laws and not be held accountable and, be forced to have to remain in prison if that is the sentencing that they received? No, they shouldn't be exempted. They're not above the law, they're not above reproach. So, having said that, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. We're going to go through the series, and like I said, I'm just a huge fan of Hood Horrors. Shout out to the fantastic content creator there and that channel. I'm also going to, embed some additional information in my research and what I'm able to come across. I would love to try to get my hands on the adoption papers for Eligio Bishop with the family that adopted him, just to be able to provide some documents that so far I haven't seen. And I've watched a few documentaries outside of Hood Horrors as well. So those types of documents I want to be able to get my hands on and present to you all and just kind of show you guys so that you can have a better understanding of his upbringing and his environment and what really led to him being the cult leader that he is today. So make sure you hit that like button and subscribe here in the Lady Luck Club if you're enjoying the content that's coming forth, as well as consider becoming a member. Exclusive court documents, lawsuit filings, and pleadings, and just, you know, hanging out with the supporters and members there are going to be in the members only. So consider becoming a member today, and please help push towards the goal of the channel growth and hoping to have 30,000 subs by the end of July. So, want to thank all of you for the support here in the Lady Luck Club. Let's get to it. We're going to check out part one. This is the rise and fall of Nature Boy Eligio Bishop on Hood Horrors YouTube channel. make sure you guys go and show them some love. He has 8.24 subscribers, but these videos are very popular. 78,000 views. So I am just excited about starting these series, and I think it is going to give a lot of insight into other, cult members and that the thought process and the mentality, and just kind of knowing some of the things to look out for, so that you're not, no one becomes victim to falling into a cult, and then you see the dangers of trying to leave and get out. Um, we're gonna go through the series. I have reached out to Hood Horrors, so hopefully, like I said, I'm not here to copy anyone's work. I just wanted to be able to feature his videos that he have, and hopefully you guys go and check out his entire playlist. He has about 34, 33, 34 episodes, and I want to look at them all. That is how good his videos are on Eligio Bishop. So make sure you hit the like button. Check out Hood Horror's YouTube channel. Give him a like and a thumbs up, and subscribe if you enjoy the content there as well. Let's get to it.
On March 1st, 2024, self-proclaimed cult leader Eligio Bishop, also known as Nature Boy, was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, plus 10 years for rape, unlawful restraint, and 3 counts of revenge porn. The trial took place in Atlanta, Georgia, and lasted a week. It took the jury less than 8 hours to return a guilty verdict.
Eligio Bishop guilty on all counts.
Eligio Bishop has just been found guilty of rape, false imprisonment, and posting revenge porn online.
The DeKalb County judge issued the maximum sentence, sending Bishop to prison for life.
This unbiased and detailed documentary series will chronicle the full story of Nature Boy, from his birth in Harlem to the leader of Carbonation, his spiritual cult that traveled throughout Central America. The story is quite intriguing. Some say Nature Boy's life sentence was his karma. You be the judge.
I'll tell you a story about me.
Reflex shoot.
This is 2018.
Carbonation.
What is carbonation?
The Christ conscious.
Who are you?
Angels of the Most High. Divine angels of light.
Who am I?
The Honorable Master Teacher Nature Boy. Commander-in-Chief of the Earth Plane. My highest self.
Who am I?
Queen Eliana. Commander-in-Chief of the Earth Plane. My highest self.
Where do you come from?
The highest frequency of the sun.
And what is your mission?
To collect the elite and convict the weak. Reflex shoot.
I love myself.
I love myself.
These are my motherfucking worshipers. That's what the fuck they do. They sit around and look at me all day
Wow.
long. Everything that I say, they stuck on me. It don't matter what I do. It don't matter what I say, they're gonna be there. That's how they are, because I'm a God. I'm a real God in real life. These people is my slaves, bro. Are these the best servants that the African American people have to offer? No. This is good practice. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up.
So you can see already just him being, in this position to where he's diminishing and, devaluing his own supporters here. And that's something that you see all too common in cults. Oftentimes the cult leader will be verbally abusive and berate their own supporters and followers, and then be forced to believe that this type of behavior is okay or acceptable. And what you end up seeing is a collection of people who really don't have a high level of self-esteem or confidence within themselves, and they go and gravitate towards these strong arm, more I don't want to say leaders, but these strong arm men like Eligio Bishop, who also has little to no confidence in himself, and they feel like they're just kind of indebted to him. And this blind following of individuals who aren't really sure who they are and the value that they have in themselves. They're not recognizing, how valuable they are, and that no one should be treated this way. They end up believing that it's like that victim's mentality. This is okay. This is part of him showing me love. It comes to a point where the line between, typical, normal, maybe strife, it erodes when it merges into just a flat out devaluing, demeaning, dehumanizing behavior, abuse, even verbal abuse, psychological, mental, emotional abuse, begins to become more of a common thing. And that's when the signs of, okay, this is starting to be merge into more of a cult like type of personality, as opposed to just someone having, a strong mindset maybe, but yet would not ever put other people in danger or hurt or harm others. This is what you see in absence of in a cult. And then oftentimes the leaders are just narcissistic. So there are a lot of personality traits that goes along with what we understand and know to be narcissism that begins to take over. And it gives the supporters, the followers, this sense of this is okay because of who he is, but the one or two things he does for us, you know, it's almost as if this is all we're worthy of. And that's what you see in these cults. And that's something to pay attention to, especially when they're all over social media. So, all right, let's keep going.
For those of you not familiar with Nature Boy or carbonation, you're probably thinking to yourself right now, what the fuck is this? To get a full understanding and a detailed answer to that question, we have to start the story in Harlem in the year 1982.
New York's Harlem, the nation's largest black ghetto, its worst slum, and perhaps its largest breeding ground for crime on the streets.
The war on drugs, the crack era, I emerged from that.
Although the crack epidemic wouldn't start until a few years later and totally destroyed inner cities throughout the United States.
Wow.
In the early 80s, most inner cities were already in shambles because of heroin. Harlem at the time was the epicenter of the heroin trade and had been for decades.
In just this 1 square mile of Harlem, police estimate that 20,000 of the 80,000 who live here, 1 out of every 4, are heroin addicts and therefore muggers, purse snatchers, shoplifters.
Harlem was a stomping ground of numerous drug kingpins that made millions off of heroin, such as Bumpy Johnson, Pee Wee Kirkland, Nicky Barnes, and Guy Fisher, just to name a few. Throughout the 70s, a 7-man group known as the Council, led by Nicky Barnes, controlled the heroin trade.
Wow.
Harlem was their home base. The Council would distribute heroin to multiple cities throughout the U.S. and generate millions of dollars. Nicky had been dubbed Mr. Untouchable by the media after successfully beating multiple charges and arrests throughout that era. In June of 1977, Nicky Barnes appeared on the front page of the New York Times. This would prove to be his downfall. Former President Jimmy Carter read the article and ordered the Department of Justice to aggressively prosecute Nicky. In January of 1978, just 7 months after the New York Times cover, Nicky would be sentenced to life without parole.
Wow.
Guy Fisher, along with other council members, would take over the operation once Nicky was sentenced. It was around this time that Guy Fisher would use drug money to purchase the world-renowned Apollo Theater. He would make history by being the first black person to own it. By
Yeah, this is the type of history that, I'm just appreciating so much in this video. And it just goes to show the work that Hood Horrors put into putting these videos together. It should definitely have more than 78,000 views. I guarantee you that. His video should have 1 million views or more. This is absolutely fantastic. And I'm learning some things too myself. So it's just amazing to see how, Harlem looked just a mere 30, 40 years ago. And now there are parts of downtown Manhattan in New York that are just unaffordable and unattainable. It's just amazing. And I've been to the Apollo Theater once with a music group. I used to take piano lessons. And it's when you go inside, it's like you have that sense that you're walking into a part of history. But who knew that this was the history here? So this is one of the good things that I appreciate about just fantastic independent journalism and research and reporting, is that you should walk away learning something, that you did not know at the end of the day. So this is definitely interesting to me. And so glad I'm sitting here going through these series. This is, I tell you guys, this is going to be absolutely amazing. So let's get back to it.
1982, the council was responsible for the majority of heroin across the entire eastern seaboard. But the council's deadly grip on the heroin trade wouldn't last long. After Nicky learned Guy Fisher was involved in a sexual relationship with one of his girlfriends, he decided to turn informant.
So yeah, tell me what it is you have in mind. I'm a friend of mine. We're supposed to be doing things, Yeah. And well, you're doing things against me, really. And I have no way to reach out to get to him, and I want to get back at him. That's my problem.
As a result of Nicky turning informant, Guy Fisher, along with multiple members of the council and many of their associates, were arrested and charged with multiple offenses for drugs and murder.
Former associates of Harlem drug king Leroy Nicky Barnes charged today with narcotics conspiracy and 6 murders. As Jim Van Sickle learned, the man behind the charges is none other than Barnes himself.
Yeah, this is over a woman. He found out one of them was messing with his girlfriend or ex or a woman. I just want to make sure I understood this right. This went down because of a woman. Let me go back.
But the council's deadly grip on the heroin trade wouldn't last long. After Nicky learned Guy Fisher was involved in a sexual relationship with one of his girlfriends, he decided to turn informant.
Tell me what it is you have in mind. I'm a friend of mine. We're supposed to be doing things, Yeah. And all these doing things against me, really. And I have no way to reach out to get to them.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. This is horrible altogether. I mean, you're pushing, heroin and drugs into the black community where thousands died. And then let's not forget, 1982 is like the height of the AIDS pandemic. So you had even more people dying because they were sharing needles and doing drugs and things of that nature, and spreading around HIV and AIDS. So no, it's still a horrible person. But just to think that this all kind of started collapsing and the snitching got real over his girlfriend. Oh, man.
As a result of Nicky turning informant, Guy Fisher, along with multiple members of the council and many of their associates, were arrested and charged with multiple offenses from drugs to murder.
Former associates of Harlem drug king Leroy Nicky Barnes charged today with narcotics conspiracy and 6 murders. As Jim Van Sickle learned, the man behind the charges is none other than Barnes himself.
Guy Fisher will ultimately be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
8 years ago, Nick was the scum of the earth in terms of court, being in the courtroom. And then 3 years ago, he became Robin Hood because he was telling.
Guy was served nearly 4 decades in federal prison before having his sentence overturned. He was released in 2020.
Wow.
On April 13th, 1982, a public hearing was held to designate the Apollo Theater as a historical landmark. Just a few weeks later, on April 29th, and just a short distance away from the Apollo, in New York's Presbyterian Hospital, Eligio Prada, aka Nature Boy, was born. He would be born addicted to heroin that had most likely been pushed into the streets of Harlem by members of the council. Nature Boy was the fourth of 5 children born to his mother, Patricia Covington. She gave him the nickname Lee when he was a baby.
That's my mom, and that's my dad, y'all. And that's me as a baby.
His father, Eligio Prada Sr., who died from a heart attack soon after this picture was taken.
Too.
At the time of Nature Boy's birth, him and his family lived in East Harlem's Wagner Projects on 10 Palladino Avenue, apartment 10E. Nature Boy was too young to remember Wagner, but his sister Nisha, who's older than him by 7 years, will later explain what life was like in the projects back then.
It was a lot of memories, I could tell you that much. Not all good memories, but it was a lot of good memories. It was good memories, yeah.
A few months before Nature Boy's second birthday, him and his siblings were taken into state custody for neglect because of his mother's drug abuse.
Wow.
Within the next year, his mother would die from an overdose.
My mom died when I was 2 years old. I wasn't able to get to know her, nor understand or remember her.
My mom passed in 84. Right before my mom died, we were all taken away. She was street. That's why she died so young. She died at 33. You can't be doing nothing but the street if you're dying at 33. I don't care what my mother was doing or what she did or what she ever did or where she ever came up short. I would never disrespect her, even down to this day right here if she was alive.
Wow.
After his mother died, Nature Boy and his siblings would become wards of the state. Him and his little brother Leo would stay together, while the rest of the siblings would be split up. Nature Boy's rough start at life would prove to be the catalyst of a series of unfortunate events that would end up molding him into the troubled and unstable adult that he would become in the future.
See, it's all about perspective.
After being separated from their siblings, Nature Boy and Leo will begin their long journey through the New York City foster system.
On the foster home, that's what I remember. His ass is right next to me.
By the time Nature Boy and Leo were around 7 or 8 years old, they were repeatedly getting kicked out of foster homes for constantly fighting. The state had no choice but to separate them.
So we fought. That's what I kind of remember. There was always a competition for him and me. They separated.
After Nature Boy was separated from his brother, he was sent to a foster home in Queens that was headed by a couple named Mr. and Mrs. Pope. It was around this time that he began exploring his sexuality. He stated that he began humping boys and girls whenever he got the chance. He would even admit to engaging in a sexual act with an animal.
As a child, I ain't gonna lie, I let a dog lick my penis.
Oh
And it
no!
felt good.
Oh no! Oh
I don't
no!
regret it either, because at the time, it made me feel good.
Oh no!
Nature Boy
No!
would later share stories of being sexually abused and also being forced to engage in sexual acts with other foster children, while Mr. Pope would take pictures.
I'm sad that happened, so disrespect. Wow. Fucked up. I think that.
This is another issue as well. When you see a common theme, a common pattern, with cult leaders like this, they oftentimes come from these traumatic abusive situations as well, not to justify the abuse that he inflicted on others, but just to provide context of the abuse that he himself endured. I mean, if he was born to being addicted to heroin, being addicted to drugs. You can imagine the withdrawal that took on him as a newborn, and then, less than 2 years later loses his mother. So this is also one of the things that I was trying to find is some of the documents um, of for the adoption, as well as the documents regarding the foster home environment, just to be able to kind of show, you're being bounced around as a child from home to home to home to home, and especially over fighting. I mean, it has to be excessive to the point where you're talking about foster parents just saying, I don't want to deal with this after 1 or 2 fights. So that in and of itself, that pattern of rejection can also take a toll and create other issues within, cult leaders like this, because then they start having a hard time accepting rejection as they get older. And they also have a hard time allowing people to distance themselves or to let others just get away and leave them alone. So either have trust issues where they don't let, real people into their inner circle. They have a hard time being loved and loving others. And they definitely have a hard time of accepting rejection. All right, let's keep going.
Probably take it to anybody. Probably would have turned out to be a different person. He would later tell a social
worker the
abuse and was ultimately removed from the foster home. Nature Boy would be reunited with his brother, and together they lived in this building in Patterson Projects in the Bronx with a foster mother named Miss Dukes. Sometime between the years of 1989 and 1993, Nature Boy and Leo were both adopted by the Bishops, a middle-class couple in Willingboro, New Jersey. They lived in this house on Evergreen Drive.
Both of us got adopted, so our last names changed. So all of a sudden, both our last names are Bishop.
We had 2 fruit trees in the backyard. Check that out. So we was back in the back, climbing those trees, eating fruit all day.
Although the Bishops were financially well off, Nature Boy would later recall being denied the simplest things while living in their household.
They wouldn't let us use a washing machine. I had to wash my clothes by hand. She wouldn't let me have lights in my room. Like, there was no light in my room. It was just a dresser, darkness.
Soon after being adopted by the Bishops, Nature Boy and Leo were both diagnosed with behavioral disorders, and they were both put on medication.
I had hyperactive. He just had attention deficit disorder. Some of us, I don't know.
She took us out of regular school and put us in special ed. She put us on Ritalin so she can get SSI check for us. She used us as a hustle. She didn't adopt us because she wanted to adopt us. She adopted us because she was trying to make a check.
Wow.
According to Nature Boy, the chores seemed endless.
That is all too common though with foster parents, and even in those types of situations, they're already well off. They're like a pretty decent home to live in early mid 90s, but yet you put these kids that have already gone through the system, you put them in a situation where you're still denying them basic necessities, basic quality of life. What do you mean you can't have did they have toys? They only had one light. Denying them certain foods and things of that nature. I mean, it's insane. Washing clothes by hand, but they had a wash and dryer. Like those types of things, it's like another form of just control. But yet, these cult leaders, they turn around and end up being controlling in these situations. And they don't really try to deal with the trauma that they dealt with, growing up as a child. And they just perpetuate these same, scenarios and the personalities and the characteristics. They just perpetuate the same behavior as they get older, and then try to justify it by saying, well, this is what I experienced growing up. But no one ever really sits down and tells them, you don't have to be a product of your environment. There's another path to it. And here's this different path. But, unfortunately, this is another common theme that you see amongst cult leaders.
He recalled working for hours upon hours in Mrs. Bishop's garden and having endless chores in and outside the house.
She made us slave in her garden, and she was a very mean lady.
The Bishops owned a church, so attending service every Sunday and having Bible study on a regular basis was mandatory.
What was
As
he
time
doing?
passed, the Bishops began using corporal punishment as a form of discipline. Getting spanked with a belt was to be expected if they broke the rules.
I didn't want to get my ass beat if I did something wrong or chastise me. Only God loved the ones where he chastised. I didn't take it as a bad note. I was like, I don't have to do that no more because I can't sit down.
While Leo understood spankings to be a form of discipline, Nature Boy thought the complete opposite. He looked at it as pure abuse.
I was abused by the Bishops. They abused me.
After a few years of living with the Bishops, Nature Boy started running away from home as a form of rebellion. Soon he began getting arrested for breaking into cars and houses with friends from his neighborhood.
I got locked up for robbery, burglary, breaking the entry. Nigga, I got locked up for everything. Nigga, I don't know what I was locked up for. I was so young, I was committing so many crimes.
At the age of 14, Nature Boy was ultimately sentenced as a juvenile to serve 5 years incarceration.
They told me I had 5 years, but to me, that seemed like a lifetime.
He would first be sent here to Jamesburg Detention Center, where he would stay until just after his 16th birthday. He then was sent to another facility where he would stay for another 2 years.
I just wanted to die. Try to slice my wrist, try to kill myself, like everything. I remember hanging myself. I hung myself in my cell.
After multiple threats and attempts to commit suicide, they transferred him to a mental institution.
I was in that bitch for 6 months. Every 2 months I had to go to court. I went to court 3 times. And the judge kept saying, look, if he ain't on no medication, then we can't keep him here.
It was around this time that Nature Boy would ultimately track down his sister Nisha.
I got a call and he was like, it's her, it's my sister, it's my sister.
I was looking for you all my life. I was looking for you. And I found you. Yes, you did.
He was also able to get in contact with his older sister Tanya.
Tanya was like, yo. And
there's 4 of them.
My older sister Tanya, she was with the niggas like, yo.
Through Tanya, he was able to find out his older brother Demetrius, also known as Dan, was currently serving time in a New York State prison. In 2001, soon after his 19th birthday, Nature Boy was released and ended up moving back in with the Bishops. But after an argument, they kicked him out.
They didn't give a fuck about me. I was on my own.
Nature Boy would bounce from house to house, living with friends in Willingboro, until moving to Philly in late 2001. He lived with a friend on this block, 27th and Tasker in South Philly, and worked as a security guard for a few months, until he decided to join the Army.
You couldn't take the Army. Discharge his ass. Can you see what y'all can get me to go to the Army? I'm not going to nobody Army.
According to Nature Boy, he was honorably discharged once they found out he had a history of mental illness.
I was kind of lucky probably because I didn't have to go to war, because they were sending niggas straight from the duty stations right to Iraq.
My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger.
After narrowly avoiding going to war in Iraq, Nature Boy would move back to Philly with his friend before enrolling in Job Corps in Maryland. During his time in Job Corps, his friend in Philly was found murdered in his house.
Somebody killed him in a tub. And I used to live in the same house. Somebody ran up in the shit and killed him.
Philadelphia police are investigating a homicide.
Police returned to the scene today searching for evidence. So far, no suspect information or any arrests.
Nature Boy would leave Job Corps soon after the death of his friend. He linked up with his brother Leo, and the two of them would ultimately travel to New York to live with their sister Nisha.
He went and got Leo, and they both came to my house. I was living in the Bronx on the Schuler Parkway.
Nature Boy and Leo would live with Nisha for a few months until an argument resulted in them leaving her house.
One day I came from work, and he...
So you see this pattern in this common theme here with the arguments, the, level of violence and aggression. And of course, he's already got a criminal history now. And, I will agree that his adoptive parents were abusive, especially if there's SA allegations that he endured. That kind of shaped that deviancy in him, with that. And doesn't seem like it was thoroughly and properly addressed and dealt with and handled, other than just them being medicated, which, you do have certain scenarios where you have these foster mothers, the adoptive parents, they only bring in children just to collect money from the government. But that brings along a lot of abusive conduct and behavior. And in the long run, it ends up really hurting, the child as they get older more than anything else, all because someone wanted to just be greed for money. They just wanted a check. This is, part of that consequence of that. So let's get back to it.
He came in and told Leo, get your shit, we out of here.
They headed to Augusta, Georgia to live with their older sister, Tanya. Nature Boy quickly landed a job at this slaughterhouse, where he worked 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week. Over the course of time, Nature Boy and Tanya began to clash. And after a physical altercation, Tanya kicked him out.
They had a disagreement, but he punched Tanya in the face. And that's how they kind of fell out.
Leo stayed living with Tanya as Nature Boy found himself homeless. He lived on the streets of Augusta for a few weeks until he got in touch with an old friend from Philly. He learned his friend had recently moved to Atlanta, and the friend urged him to come stay with him. Nature Boy took his friend up on the offer and headed to Atlanta. He got a job as a barber and navigated through Atlanta by meeting different women and using them for their cars and a place to stay.
I use my body. I use my looks.
After settling into his new surroundings, he started modeling, but that would only last a short period of time. His main source of income would be from cutting hair.
But that cutting hair shit wasn't making money fast enough for me, man, because what I was trying to do and what I was trying to be wasn't good enough. So the way I was staying afloat was I was selling weed and I was cutting hair.
By this time, he had a girlfriend, but after breaking up with her, he found himself homeless once again. Everything would change for Nature Boy when he was presented with an opportunity to make money stripping at gay strip clubs. Feeling like this was his best option at the moment, he seized on the opportunity.
Oh, yeah, I made a lot of money doing that.
Nature Boy was given the name Tyson because they said he resembled Tyson Beckford. In a matter of months, he was headlining shows throughout the country and abroad.
I was the #1 dancer that was hosting the shows in every gay arena.
I was disappointed the point in my time in my brother's life that's what he wanted to experience, and it is what it is. We never grew up on shit like that.
It was sometime after coming to Atlanta, he would have his first son by a woman named Javine. They would name him Eligio Jr., EJ for short. A few years later, he would begin dating a single mother of two named Maisha. She would eventually give birth to Osiris, Nature Boy's second son.
Maisha, that's my girl, man. This is one of his baby mothers. She get along with me better than she do with her own baby daddy. That's crazy.
With the first.
As a way to make more money, Nature Boy began Escort.
I didn't, maybe I missed it, but he went from one baby mother to another one. So that's like 2 kids. The sons are adorable though, but it's unfortunate. This is how they have to learn of their father. I mean, it's part of who he is, being a cult leader.
And for gay men as a side hustle while continuing to work in the strip clubs.
I was someone that was a straight male.
Well, he was bisexual.
That was comfortable enough to allow my body to be utilized by somebody for their pleasures. So I was what you call a prostitute, a male prostitute. Basically, I was gay for pay. I was a boyfriend experience for gay men, and I seen all the down low men. I seen them all.
It was sometime during his first few months in Atlanta that Nature Boy was starting a gay porno. His decision to do this would eventually come back to haunt him in the future.
You see me on that doctor table, I regret that. That was a stupid thing I did in my life.
Nature Boy would later state he had always been attracted to transsexuals, but never had sex with one until he started working as a stripper.
I'm attracted to transsexuals because they're more women than the women that we have. And I'm being honest with myself. When I seen them in the club, I had an experience with one, and I was having sex with her in the back, and that was an experience I never had in my life. And I didn't. It's something that I never could get with a woman.
As Nature Boy got deeper into the stripper lifestyle, he began to drink heavily and would become physically abusive towards Maisha whenever he got drunk.
I have no comment. Let's keep going.
As time went on, the abuse got more severe.
I'm a gorilla. I'm a motherfucking beast. Ask Maisha. Go talk to her. Ask her who the fuck I am.
One of the worst incidents of abuse towards Maisha was when they got into an argument at a nightclub. Maisha left the club and went home. But just as she was...
That's not manly, because you beat on women. And I think him being attacked and assaulted in prison quite recently, either last year or this year, it kind of goes to show and prove, like, you can't you can't say it's very manly to just to see him beat on women, but then when you're around men, you're completely cowardice in nature. Your whole behavior is more cowardly, because he's not going to step up to a dude and try to just beat on a guy like that. And if he does, I guarantee you this person might not be his, as they say, pick on someone your own size, they won't be his size. And he probably will have more than one person around to aid in that fight. But if he had to go one-on-one with a guy that just as tough, or if not more tough than he is, and probably would give him a good butt whooping, he would cowardly bow out. He wouldn't do it. And just turn into a childlike state, because this is how these physical abusers are. They go for the weaker people. They go for the ones that they know they would have dominance over physically. And there's nothing manly about this, and he's bragging on it.
He was about to go to sleep. She heard a noise outside of her house.
I look out the window, he's stabbing my tires to my car. So I go to the door, he like, come outside. I'm like, nah, like, you've been drinking, I know you. I don't do you with alcohol. Like, go ahead. He pulls me outside, and I was holding onto the door. So when I held onto the door, I closed it. He dragged me down the stairs. He got on top of me. He was beating my face in. And I don't know how the police just pulled up in the yard. They saw him on top of me, and they pulled him off of me.
When I was hitting her, a cop came out of nowhere. A cop forced me off her because I'm trying to fucking murder her.
The beating would leave Maisha's entire face swollen and bruised.
Disgusting.
She was immediately rushed to the hospital, and Nature Boy would be arrested for aggravated battery.
The case went on for almost like a year. The judge who was on the bench, he was ready to throw the book at him.
I said to the universe, if you get me off this case, I promise you, I will never get in another assault, another battery. I will never do no violent shit.
Yeah, as we go through these series, those words will mean nothing. They will not hold any weight at all. Absolutely nothing. This is why, when it comes down to it, people need to be handled accordingly. If he would have gone to prison for a while or on this charge here, a lot of other victims would have been spared.
Shit, no more nothing, yo.
Nature Boy would end up avoiding the prison sentence when Maisha wrote a letter to the prosecutor, taking half the responsibility for the fight. Instead of prison, Nature Boy was sentenced to an anger management class and a fine. Even after a full year, the bruises on Maisha's face still weren't fully healed.
Had these dark bags up under my eyes that stayed, and it was just nothing but probably they were saying it was old blood. He encouraged me to get makeup to hide it because he also was tired of looking at me like that.
Nature Boy and Maisha would eventually get back together with the hopes of leaving the past behind them and moving forward.
I got sick and depression on what I did with her. Like, this is a deep relationship.
It was after this incident that Nature Boy would leave the stripping and escorting life behind him.
I was an exotic entertainer for the longest, man. It was like sweet money, man. It was like, hey, I get to be myself, be sexy, and have sex and get money. Hell yeah, sign me up.
But he didn't beat on those men like that. But he beat on a woman. And this, you know, it goes back to his childhood. His mom passed when he was 2. You know, the foster mothers he had all rejected him, put him out over fights. Then the one that adopted him allowed him to be abused, made him, and you know, basically into a, you know, child labor worker for basic human rights and a light and food. The punishments that they received was beyond normal or reasonable. And yes, you do have men that end up developing a deep-seated, you know, resentment and even hatred for women. But this is part of them not dealing with their traumatic past. So let's keep going.
Yep. What I realized is that people only seen me from my body, and I knew I was more than that. After a while, you know, my phone was ringing for sex, and people just see me as this object, and I was realizing, like, damn, why am I using my body to make money? I literally was using my body to make money. It drained me. It taught me a lot about sexuality, though.
Nature Boy ended up going to school to obtain his barber's license.
When people was in school with me, they was like, man, what barbershop you going to work at? I never thought to go work at a barbershop. I always thought when I got my barber license, it was for me to go get my own barbershop.
Having been around the gay strip club scene for 10 years, he knew almost everybody in those circles.
10 years he did.
He printed out business cards and handed them out at numerous gay clubs around Atlanta.
Gay people like their haircut, so I marketed to them because they like to get their haircut more than anything.
He would also get customers by hanging out in local hotel bars where most tourists hung out.
Before you know it, I was charging $40, $50 for a haircut. I rented me.
He's saying they as if he's not, you know, somehow bisexual. I mean, we don't contort the definition of, you know, bisexuality here. He willingly slept with men. And I think they mentioned a transsexual. So you see in this first episode so far, he has not really, you know, confronted the fact that he was bisexual.
Me a room, I bought me a barber chair, and I said, this is gonna be my little barbershop. You know what I'm saying? And this is gonna be Bishop's HD Cuts right here. You get an appointment for an hour, you get in the chair, it was professional. All my equipment was clean, I was licensed. I was getting $50, $60 a cut. I had 40 clients, $50, $60 a cut. Of course, I was cute, so I flirted with them.
Out of Nature Boy's 4 years old clients,
that was something he
a few of them had been his previous customers from when he was an escort. One of those customers was a man by the name of Dr. Mike Brown. Mike was the president of a theological seminary and also a world-renowned biblical scholar.
The Holy Spirit isn't already, but immortality is a not yet.
Throughout the years, Mike and Nature Boy had become extremely close. In fact, it had become so close that Mike added Nature Boy to his bank account and gave him a $3,000 a month allowance. Although Nature Boy never confirmed the rumors, many people speculated that him and Mike Brown were actually a gay couple.
Yeah, I saw it for my own self. I think they was really pretty close from my standpoint. From outside looking in, it was pretty tight. Closer than me and him should have been. Like, I was like, yeah, let's turn up with them.
Oh, come on, look at that photo.
Seeing how serious Nature Boy was about wanting to open up a barbershop, Mike offered him the money to open one.
He's like, how much do you think you would need? I said, $25,000 would be good. He was like, okay, get me a business plan.
Nature Boy got a business plan written up and found a location. After a few months of remodeling, Bishop's HD Cuts officially opened its doors for business on June 21st, 2014. Nature Boy hired a team of talented barbers and hired a hairdresser for the women. Within months of opening the shop, it was showing signs of becoming a success. Not too long after it opened, Leo made his way to Atlanta to link up with Nature Boy.
I was living in the back of the shop, sweeping up here for tips and running errands.
Nature Boy never really gave Leo a reason why, but he told him he didn't want him cutting hair in the shop. So Leo started making money off the talent he had since a kid.
I got my own land and started start drawing people's pictures whenever they want me to draw from on t-shirts.
Oh wow,
That's how I started making my money.
By the end of 2014, Nature Boy's personal outlook on life began to evolve. He yearned to leave Atlanta and live life closer to nature.
I've always been someone that was speaking knowledge and information, you know, and so I met people that I could intellectually speak with. You know, we would meet up for dinner and have just these arguments and discussions, and that is what sparked me.
Nature Boy said after having these intellectual conversations, he would go back to the barbershop and felt out of place. Slowly but surely, he began to distance himself from the barbershop and stayed home researching everything from natural science to astrology to Black cultural history. As time passed, the feelings of wanting to leave Atlanta and move closer to nature became overwhelming. Nature Boy took the first step into ensuring his dream would become a reality. He bought an RV.
When he got in that RV, he said he was going to travel or whatever the case may be. But at that time, I believe he was still seeing if Maisha was going to join him on the journey.
Convincing Maisha wasn't hard. She was excited and looked forward to living on the road and making lifelong memories with her family.
Husband's out here. This is an RV. Wish we had an RV. Yeah. So, yes.
Mind you, she had 2 children before she got in a relationship with him, and then they had one together. So she had 3 children. Then he had a previous son that he called Junior, Eligio Bishop Jr., I think. And then he had one with her. So you're talking about 5 children collectively between the 2 of them. And you're robbing the oldest child, you know. Really, I don't know if it's I'll say this. The oldest child was robbed an opportunity to really be a part of, you know, the father's life and vice versa. But they'll learn about who their dad really was through videos and documentaries and court documents, that the notoriety and his willingness to become, you know, this huge popular person kind of took over the logic and reasoning and balance and trying to at least stay actively involved in his children's life. To just uproot like that, you got kids. You know, how do they fit into this narrative here? And he never thought about that. He just thought about his own desires.
It's a truck. We just bought the camp RV, so he's getting some work done on the truck, just making sure the truck is strong enough and is working good enough to.
How did they go to school?
Hold the RV and not give us any problems. Anyway, like I said, we're moving into the RV full time, and
yeah, but the kids got to go to school.
Osiris. This is gonna be the first of many videos about us being on the road and going different places. Like I said, we're going to Harlem first.
On March 3rd, 2015, Nature Boy, Maisha, and the kids left their house
They
in
lived
Atlanta
in a nice house
and began their new life living in their RV. Nature Boy hired a manager to run the barbershop while he hit the road. Leo was left to fend for himself, still living in the back of the shop.
I traveled the whole coast of Florida, stayed at all the RV parks.
Left his brother?
And mind you, I'm this black kid from the hood, pulling up in an RV. You know, it's nothing but elder white people out there, you know, that retired in their fishing boats and stuff. Like, yo, this is when I knew I was different.
Although Nature Boy was out on the open road and experiencing things he'd never done before, there was still a part of him that yearned for more. He felt like he just wanted to disattach himself from society altogether and just leave everything behind. Maisha could sense something was wrong.
She was there with him and she was doing the journey with him, but she was saying that he was seeming to be still unhappy.
Just a little over a month after leaving Atlanta,
Nature Boy's plan to live
on the road would come to an abrupt end.
My barbershop started to fall apart, so I had to come back.
All right, to continue, y'all. That's the end of this first video. I do want to pull up this information that I found in my research here. This is on www.cbc.ca news, and this is an article on Nature Boy, the cult leader, regarding Kyla Reed, who came from, I think, Newfoundland, Canada. Her family had reported her missing, but I wanted to get down to the part here where they give some background on the arrest and just kind of his upbringings here. And you guys can definitely pull up this article and read the information here. It states Eligio Bishop is a former model, stripper, prostitute, and barber. These days he's a self-professed cult leader. His exact location, the Costa Rican jungle. This is after he went to Costa Rica, so I don't want to skip ahead too far because the series does go. It's a very well done thorough series on Hood Horror's YouTube channel. but it will touch on his move to Costa Rica. But of course, there was the checkered criminal past in history. It states that, he has the full support and devotion of 21-year-old Kyla Reed, and she left her home in Newfoundland and moved to Costa Rica to be with Bishop and his followers. Of course, you'll see in the later series where he just kind of becomes this whole mouthpiece for everyone. Barely let people speak for themselves, but it's the transition for him going from being a stripper and a barbershop owner, having kids, and you know having this checkered past to just being this full-blown cult leader, and all of those other prior misdeeds, his whole prior life. It's almost like he just kind of forgot that it existed. You know, um, you're not gonna just make a move like this to Costa Rica and you have children here. How do they fit into the narrative once again? So it says in 2009, he was arrested for forcible entry in Georgia. 2 years later, he faced charges of theft and was arrested for aggravated battery. No charges were laid in the latter incident. Of course, we heard about in the first episode where he abused his second son's mother, but then she writes a letter to the court, saying, "Hey, I take some blame in this, even though." Listening to her give the history of what happened, how can you take blame in that? Neither one of them really said what she did wrong. She just didn't want him to come into the house because he was drunk. So there's no blame to take in that, but it goes to show that the level of influence and almost, brainwashing type of method done even on in the beginning stages before he started the cult. And of course, cult leaders tend to play victimhood oftentimes because they're drawing on your emotions. They want you to feel, the way they feel, but ignore the facts, and the evidence of what's really going on. And then the trauma that they've experienced, they never deal with it. So this is some information I hope you guys check out. We're going to continue to dive into these series with Eligio Bishop. I don't want the video to be extraordinarily too long, but just to kind of, put out there someone who has a cult that's still in effect and existing here in Atlanta in the state of Georgia, which can be very, 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 very dangerous. He still has a substantial number of followers, men and women. And it's just, it goes to show how powerful, a person that is allowed to do what they want to do without real consequences, and has this narcissistic personality and profile about them, can get away with so much. And it's easy to fall within that trap, that whole cult like mentality. And as we go through the series, you'll start to see this pattern here in every scenario. When he lived with his sisters, he gets put out because of the arguments and the fights and those types of things. It's just a pattern of behavior, and it's repetitive, but it never gets addressed, and it's never handled properly, and there's no real consequence. So this is where I'm going to leave it at. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Shout out to Hood Horrors once again, for just doing these series and great journalism. Fantastic. You guys make sure you go and check out Hood Horrors YouTube channel. And it's a whole playlist. So we're still going to go through them. I've seen all the episodes at least once. But I definitely am enjoying going back and revisiting the older episodes, and just being able to kind of go through, give commentary, give some background information. I'm going to try to find some adoption papers, just to be able to show that, the context, and hopefully people can understand and piece together, the true price that's being paid, when these actions and the actions and the personality that becomes cult like lead to, this type of behavior where consequences is delayed for an extended period of time. So 34 episodes later, yes, he is now in prison, but it took a minute to get to that point because there's a lot that we're going to uncover that he did, that he should have gone to prison over a long time ago. I mean, case in point, the son's mother writing to the court saying, "Oh, I take blame in him, abusing me to the point where she still has scars 3 or 4 years later." Insanity. All right. You guys let me know what you think in the comment section and hit the like button, share the video. I'm going to have a playlist. So you guys will be able to go straight to this playlist where we're going to cover these series, and make sure you tune in for more great content. Hopefully I'll be able to do a video at least 3-4 days a week on Eligio Bishop, aka Nature Boy. So thank you all so much for the support, and we will be doing more content coming soon. Be on the lookout. And until the next one, Lady Luck Club out. Deuces.